yes, oh yes, oh yes. This is the first episode of the Midlife Crisis podcast. My name is Jim Whelan, part of the Chop Sports family here in Manawha, New Jersey. I figured there wasn't enough podcasts in the world. I'm probably very, 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 very late to the game, but here I am. I guess you get to a point in your life where you want to take a fork in your road. And with two of my three kids in college, my wife, Colleen, said to me, "What are you going to do with yourself? You got to do something creative." So I was always into sports. I was always into writing, so I did a couple of screenplays, wrote a movie, tried to shop that around, wrote a documentary, shop that around, and any avail. Then next thing you know, we had the strike, ended up not going anywhere. Had a few ideas swimming around in my head. A couple of my colleagues, shout out to Eddie G, Manny G, started their own podcast. So a light bulb went off in my head. And listening to Steve Harvey, he's like, "When are you going to jump? When are you going to jump? When are you going to try something new? When are you going to try?" Any successful person or anybody who has something in their lives, they jump. They went and did it. They jumped off that cliff. So here I am. This is episode number 1. I really also wanted, growing up in New Jersey, uh, basketball was big. Growing up in Elizabeth, basketball was even bigger. So there's a lot of history there. So a lot of the podcast is going to be circled around conversations, basketball's conversations, high school, college, professional basketball. It's different topics. Hope the listeners can relate at home, whether they're at a dance practice, where they're mowing the lawn, or whether they're just hanging out in their basement, that they can relate to these stories. I'm excited. I'm excited to be a part of Chop Sports franchise, and I'm excited to have my first guest. There's no person in the world probably fit a better profile than my first guest of the show. He coached a small Catholic high school for about 50 years. During that time, he had amassed about 28 championships, state championships at a small school with 1,180 wins, 13 tournament champions, which covers all of the high school champions in the state of New Jersey. 4 national titles. So at 4 times he was the top high school team, had coached top high school team in New Jersey. 200 Division I scholarships. He produced 8 NBA players, one being his son. Countless high school and college coaches. 2010 high school, 2010 Hall of Fame inductee. He's part of 3 books: Miracle of St. Anthony, written by Adrian Warnowski, 2 documentaries, The Street Stop Here, and Showtime Legacy, which filmed his last season at this and it's high school. Great husband, great father. He's the pride of New York City. Lastly, the father of 2023 NCAA champion UConn Huskies, Dan Hurley. It's my pleasure to introduce Coach Bob Hurley. Just wanted to thank you for your time. And are you still riding the high from last March Madness with your son Dan with UConn? It was great to see the family all there celebrating the championship. You just tell a little bit about the tournament with UConn.
Yeah, the expectation going in, the word when you're playing at the college level, they had lost the previous 2 years in the first round. They lost to Maryland 2 years ago, and then they played against New Mexico State, and they were terrible against it. I think it was where they were, and I'm trying to think. They were in Albany. They were in New York, and that ride back home was just brutal. And, there was a lot of soul searching there to do about, how do you get your team ready, whatever the season has been, to get ready for the beginning of the tournament. And, the way the season went for them, they played very well early, Jim, not so well in January. They struggled on the road, and then kind of found out the things that people were doing against them. And then they played well, and then lost to Marquette in the semifinals of the Big East tournament. And then you have a couple of days.
Yeah, I thought Marquette might have been the team coming out of the Big East.
Oh yeah, Marquette was you just lost to a really good team in the semis, and Marquette against Marquette, they had down the stretch in the game, shooters had wide open looks, and they missed about 6 in a row. like Joey Cal, who's coming into games last year and he just banged shots. He had 2 wide open threes in a row in the game. He was relaxed and missed them all, and they lost by a couple. So they approached the tournament. We're playing well. We could have won one more game and then play for the championship. But here we go. That on Friday in the tournament, and your opening game is
Pitino, right?
Iona, right? Iona, Coach Pitino. Again, as I said, they've lost 2 years in a row, and they're down 2 at halftime. And I can tell you that in the locker room, kids were fine. The assistant coaches were all nervous wrecks, and Danny went in and just kind of like yelled and screamed at everybody that we're okay. They give them credit. They shot really well in the first half. We'll tighten some things up, and I liked everything we did. And they went out and they outscored them by 25 in the second half. And the rest of the tournament, that was in every game. They pretty much built a lead, used their bench, and played eight guys regularly, sometimes 9. Every one of them played well. It was just it was amazing to watch.
They definitely took them to the deep end and did a slow drown, and it was good to see because your grandson was on the team. He got to get in the tournament a lot of games at the end. So it was surprised as a grandfather.
Yeah, it may have been a record for walk-ons. He played all 6 games, and he did something. He did something in every game. Had a turnover, committed a foul, got a defensive rebound.
Yeah. So he made the stat sheet. So
he was in the stat sheet for all 6 games. Yeah. It carried over because the other night he got in, and he took 1 shot the other night to get in about the last 2 minutes, and he stuck a 3. And I think his 6-game experience last year made the end of the game now a little more relaxing.
Oh, well, that's good. But I mean, Danny's coaching. I mean, it's unorthodox. I mean, he was an assistant at Rutgers with Kevin Bannon, that whole thing. Started back up at St. Benedict's, and then he was with Wagner with your son Bob, and then then he got the job at URI, took them to the Sweet 16, and then UConn. So it's a little unorthodox. You think like a high school coach would, I know you had job offers. You think that's something you would see again, a high school coach going and win a national championship? That's pretty unique.
You don't have in the old days. Everybody used to blame Jerry Faust, the high school football coach who went from Moeller High School, went to Notre Dame, and it did not do very well. And then the very good high school coach from Dunbar in Baltimore, Bob Wade, he went to Maryland, and he did not have a good experience there. So everybody was in high school figured, all right, that bridge has been burned now because 2 different sports high school coaches went up and did it. And I think Danny, having had the 4 years at Rutgers and then going back to the high school ranks, he saw the college game. And then when you coach at St. Benedict's, it's like you're coaching a college because you have dormitories. They recruit international students. They have to monitor their all-day routine in Newark because the students at St. Benedict's are not allowed to leave the campus. So you've got to make sure that you've got those kids busy.
Sure. And it's a little bit tough neighborhood there too. So it's just
exactly. It's not like you have to have enough basketball after school that somebody that doesn't want to sneak out and try to get to a playground or a rec gym to play because you're out in a place at night that's you don't necessarily know. And cities are rough, but cities are really rough. You don't know where you are and where you shouldn't be.
Sure, and as I said, a lot of students coming from all of J.R. Smith. He was done well at St. Benedict's, but just a little preview with the outlook. You got your son Bob, Arizona State, and then also Dan up at UConn. Just talk a little bit about like what you see as far as where the team are going to be playing, and just kind of like, I don't want you to prophesize anything, but like what do you expect from the team?
Well, it's this new, Jim, because it is this new world of portal. I think UConn's got a lot more pieces returning. He loses Sonogo and Jackson and Hawkins, 3.
Yeah,
really
3 NBA players right there. Great players. Yeah. I mean, they play great, all 3 of them.
So you're going to replace that with other kids, but you're not going to have that same athleticism and chemistry. But you can do it in a different way, and they look like they'll be very good, but playing differently. Way more of a shooting team. Not as athletic because you're not going to replace Hawkins and Andre Jackson's athleticism. That who you play, So they'll be different, but I like what I've seen so far with them. And then Bobby's team at Arizona State, they're the poster child for the portal. They have only 3 returning players.
Oh, geez.
Yeah, Frankie Collins, point guard.
Yeah.
Jemiah Neal, who's a wing, and Alonzo Gaffney, who's a power forward, and then 9 new guys. And they opened up the other night against Mississippi State out in Chicago, and they're not ready yet. You can see these pieces; they still don't have the.
Yeah, it's tough. That's tough. But just yeah, go ahead.
You usually get what do you call it, Jim? You usually get home games. Like UConn will get a bunch of home games before the season starts now to try to get your team ready. Bobby's gone out and he's going to play 5 games on neutral sites right away against good teams. And I think the reason is that he needs the NIL money that the tournaments give you for going. And that money is going to help for him with the players there, with the NIL, because I don't think they have they're getting destroyed in comparison to the other Pac-12 teams with the money they can spend right now to keep players happy.
Because some of these schools have like almost they're like unlimited amount of money they can pay these kids, so it just changed the game. Literally. So just talk a little bit too about. I mean, you had both your sons had to go through some adversity. Bob physical, Dan, a little. He had had some issues at Seton Hall. He had to work through. Still a 1,000-point scorer, but both as a dad, like you talked a little bit about their adversity. Father to son, and that type of thing.
Yeah, I think they both had. We all go through things in life, and they both had different situations. Danny had some issues with. I think best way to characterize it is performance anxiety. He was constantly putting pressure on himself. And if you put pressure on yourself, you go out and try to hit a golf ball, or, you go out and you want to hit a baseball and you try too hard. You can't perform. You have to relax in sports participation. He couldn't do it. And then Bobby had a bad accident, which curtailed a career in basketball.
Sure.
But he had, he was just late to the dance, getting into coaching. When Danny went to the college level, they were talking, and all of a sudden he is leaving Florida and moving back up here to get into coaching. It was I think it was something he always thought about. He just didn't know how to get the process started. With Danny started with me right after he finished playing in college. He worked with me for a year, and then he went to Rutgers, and then went to St. Benedict. So he kind of knew he was going to teach and coach, but I don't think he ever thought he was going to do it to college level. I think Danny thought he was going to be a high school coach like me, and he was going to be a history teacher and coach, and it went out. It's been hugely different, and I know Bobby's happy to be back in it, and now both of them, you got to get to the tournament. That's the criteria for, and then when you get there, nobody's happy. Now you have to go someplace in the tournament.
Yeah. So, and also getting back to yourself, do you miss coaching at all? I know that, after all, like after that 2000, when St. Anthony's closed, did you miss it? Like when it came around and this time?
Yeah, I would think that if the school was still open, I take care of myself. I'm 76, but I work
still
out
look
every
good
day.
Though.
I work at it. I work Today I rode the bike. Along the waterfront for an hour. Every other day I lift. I did stuff here in the house, moving furniture, about 3 hours worth of stuff today. And I do that every single day.
Yeah, you got your honey-do list, right? So
I did. I literally set up for Christmas. So now the tree comes in, everything's in place. I took stuff out of storage unit, all the things you do when you got time. And then tonight, 7 o'clock or 9 o'clock, this Arizona and Duke will be on. Watch that. And I got Notre Dame and Rutgers football. I follow both of them. I'm so excited for where Rutgers is in football. But I still open a gym 3 days a week. So I do have young kids in Jersey City. We're offering them an opportunity to teach them how to play. We started a foundation, Hurley Family Foundation. Don't charge any of the kids. Rent the gym, work with them. Get about 90 kids a day. So that to me is very fulfilling. It's like the cycle of life from starting in CYO coaching while playing in college and all the way back to the beginning.
I was going to get to that, Coach. I know that you started this foundation after St. Anthony's closed. You started a foundation just to kind of still your hand in. How is the foundation doing, and how is it helping you, kind of stay busy in this.
Yeah, but for me personally, it's been, it was a learning experience. I run camps during the summer, so I'm used to being around younger kids. But to get back in a gym and just solely work with young kids, and then kids going out for freshman basketball would also come to the gym. And we rented the St. Anthony's gym we practiced in, the gym downtown near the tunnel. And we still had our equipment. So all we really had to do now was, unlike the days when St. Anthony's was open, we would have to fundraise about $1.5 million a year to keep the school open. This is a pittance of that now. This isn't even like 5% of that to rent the gym, to get insurance, to get the kids. Every kid comes, get a reversible shirt, and we send kids to basketball camp during the summer. We've now gotten involved with the local not-for-profits. We know, since my wife and I, we've lived here our whole lives. We know where the battles are in Jersey City and who needs money. And so we make sure that we provide money to different places. And we also, we have a scholarship thing now in a bunch of the schools. We call it the Sweep the Sheds. And it's based on rugby. The All Blacks in rugby have a motto about every place you go, you want to leave the place in a better place than when you got there. And so we do this in all of the vocational schools and the Jersey City schools, and we give out $1,000 scholarships to kids to use for expenses going into college. And we gave out, I think last year we gave out about 40 or 50 of those. So we gave a bunch of kids an opportunity to have some money to buy books and stuff, get ready for school. And we're also now involved with St. Dominic's Academy here in Jersey City.
Sure.
It's the only girls' school left in Hudson County. And with not-for-profits, about 70% of the money in not-for-profits go to men. So when we saw this, we felt we really needed to get away from what we know and do something. So we were involved there, and I think we've been able to raise well over $100,000 for them in the last 2 years.
That's nice, and they need it. And you probably can't even and like St. Anthony's, it's hard. They knocked the building down. You can't even recognize where the school was. So, I mean, I know growing up in Jersey City, people have said that Hamilton Park, I mean, it's a beautiful park, but 20, 30 years ago, you couldn't walk through it. It was a rough neighborhood.
Absolutely. You couldn't sell the brownstones there in the 80s for $20,000. And now they're all worth, upwards of $2, $3, $4 million.
It's beautiful.
It was a downtown there near St. Anthony's. Kids going to practice. They always went as a group. After practice, you went to the bus as a group. You didn't walk alone because it was rough when I went to high school 1,000 years ago downtown, and it's not that way now. But through the St. Anthony's years it was.
Yeah, it's nice. But just get back to your time at St. Anthony's. Would you find it harder to deal with Ferris High School or the Archdiocese of Newark trying to close? Which one, if you had to compare the two? I know Ferris was like a big rival.
Well, Ferris was a deadly rivalry, but it was, relatively speaking, there was transparency. You knew you were playing with high school basketball rules, and the referees, you might not like them, but they weren't going to be disingenuous. Whereas with the Archdiocese, there's no question that they want to get out of the business of education, and
I mean,
most of the school.
I grew up in Elizabeth. There's not a Catholic grammar school, Catholic high school in Elizabeth. So I mean, and where I went to Rosal Catholic. They're having funding issues too. Like
absolutely,
get students and everything else. So it's sad to see because I know when you had your speaking circuit about Miracle of St. Anthony, you're like, we're dealing with Walmarts. We're like the mom and pop shop dealing with just fundraising. So it's always about fundraising.
Yeah, we're a bodega in Jersey City. And what we also did though is we had 20 years, school closed with 20 years straight of 100% college acceptance. So we had these kids coming from all these different places in the inner city, going to high school, and then getting tutoring, working extremely hard, setting goals, getting part-time jobs so they could save money. And kids were all heading off to college. So that we were very proud of. And that was helping create generational wealth, because they were going to wind up affecting their own siblings and raising families that would have a better chance, because education clearly is the answer.
And a lot of your players end up getting out of situations where it was a cycle that they had to get out of. And also, some of your players came back. Jerry Walker came back. Sort of Team Walker, you had Terry DeHare come back. So and also some of your players became high school coaches in the area too. So I mean,
Yeah, we have
you
a
still
bunch of the kids. Yeah, a bunch of the
yeah,
kids are coaching at the high school level, college level, and amazingly, when kids go away to college, they fall in love with the area that they go to school in. And many of the kids that left Jersey City that would never have imagined it happening, raised their families in places close to where they went to college. And a lot of them back, and we still see a lot of them. We had a 50-year reunion last year of our first state championship in 1973. And the guys came back from all over the United States, and we did that on Selection Sunday, and they had a ball, and they watched the selections, and everybody headed home with their reunion shirts and a bunch of laughs.
yeah. So I mean, and that's great. I read the first book you had. I guess this was out in I pass this around and make sure I always get this back. Divided Loyalties. I think that it's a very good. Yeah, very good read. But do you ever look back on I think Pete Gillen got the job at Xavier and said, "Hey Bob, come on, let's I need you to come in." And I guess you sat at the dinner table and the family decided to stay in Jersey City. Do you ever think about if you ever took that opportunity going to Cincinnati, how different life would be, or not?
No,
Not
I've been blessed, and I think watching Danny now vicariously. I live watching locally here, and then Bobby's different because we watch his games on television. We're not going to be traveling back and forth to Arizona to see games, but no regrets. I love the 50 years I was St. Anthony's. If it was still open, I'd still be there. Never, as long as my wife said that I didn't have to get another job because we didn't have enough money for things, I was staying and coaching in high school.
Yeah.
She lowered the bar into her expectation when she married me, and it hasn't changed much over the years. So, it worked out for us. Both the kids got scholarships. Bobby and Danny get scholarships to college. Because of that, my daughter Melissa was able to, head any college she wanted to go to, because you save money for education, and if you don't have to use it, you can certainly, keep it aside to use it for the next child, which we did.
Yeah, and looking at the amount of money that's in school now. I mean, you start out probation, Jersey City, the amount of money these players get made, what these coaches got. I mean, it's gotta blow your blow your mind as far as where you started and where the game is now. I mean, it's basically a neighborhood game, and now it's international. So
yeah, the recruiting, you have somebody who can traverse all of the getting from country to country to watch players play. Got to be able to recruit the whole country. St. John's at one time would be good if they just recruited the boroughs of New York and didn't have to do more than that. And I think Al McGuire, when he's at Marquette, used to have a Fred Stegman, who was they used to call him a bird dog. He would he'd look at New York City players and he would tell Al McGuire, "Al, you should go talk to this kid." He'd fly in, and his presence was enough for kids to go to Marquette.
yeah, and it was successful. I mean, he had a successful run out there in Marquette.
Oh, yeah, great. He would get Dean Meminger, and so many players came out of New York that were just New York, New Jersey. They were great players. Jimmy Boylan, who was the point guard when he won the national championship.
And one of your players, right? Mandy Johnson went out there.
Mandy played with Doc Rivers in the backcourt right after they won a championship. They always had strong connections here. Now it's you got to get out and you got to build relationships early, and now you got to battle the NIL. What kind of money can a kid receive now? And with the transfer portal, you have to figure out how to coach them hard, but not too hard.
Sure.
Or because if you coach them too hard, they're going to leave. So you got to figure out how to coach them hard. And in each kid, it's a little different. But a team's supposed to be a democracy. So that part of it's got to be extremely difficult right now. Because if you believe that you win by hard work and team play, and then somebody's just not happy with how hard you work, that's a problem right away.
And now I sent you a text and you called me back. You say, "Jim, I'm old school. I have a flip phone." But listen to Tom Izzo, like he talked about Draymond Green and his development at Michigan State. I heard an interview with that. Do you feel like this brand of basketball is better or worse? I mean, do you feel like this shopping around for the best opportunity? I mean, obviously choice and everything, but you feel like that's what's your opinions on the state of college
we
basketball?
get off. Yeah, the NCAA, when they didn't gradually do things, both with the portal and with the NIL, it became like it's like, wide open Wild West right now. There's no simple things. Like you're allowed one transfer. One kid at Memphis this year was 27 years old. He was trying to play in his seventh year, and the NCAA turned him down. But there are kids that played in 5 schools and 6 schools so far, and they gave everybody the COVID year, so that added another year to everybody's careers. So it's been a mess. But the biggest is when they didn't resolve the Ed O'Bannon suit and just looking for a video game, and he wanted, if they were selling O'Bannon shirts in the bookstore at UCLA, he just wanted to share in that because his name was being used.
Yeah,
and
that's
not those things.
Yeah, and the Fab Five, they did that in protest. They came out all black one time, and because the same thing that they're college students, and the university is benefiting from their name, like, an image. So
Yeah, and they didn't, when they didn't address it properly, it went on and went on and went on, and now it's high school kids have NIL now. Kids in high school here in Jersey have endorsements, and kids are going to college based on how much money they're going to get in the NIL.
It's great. It's great seeing what. It's great seeing what you're seeing, though. You're rising the family up, getting these kids availability. Sometimes it might be too much too soon, too. So I guess it all depends on the person, too.
For sure. Yeah, you have. I mean, the amount of due diligence you got to do with these kids to know the structure. Danny's had 2 of his guards in the last 4 years, Hawkins and the kid Castle, who's a freshman now. Both of their fathers came from cities. Both of their fathers felt that everybody around them was being too easy on them, and they wanted them to go. They wanted both young men to go play at UConn because they knew Danny was going to coach them hard, care about them, but really push them. And they didn't want to see the kid end his career and not have reached potential. So what's his name was, Hawkins was only a top 60 player in the country, when he was a senior in high school at DeMatha, and after his sophomore year, he went into the lottery. So it doesn't have to happen right away. If you keep working, it can happen. And then Castle's different now. Castle this year is considered a top 10 in the country. So Danny keeps telling him his responsibility to work as hard as he can to justify, this rating that he has, and to live up to his potential. And because you always, at the end of the day, want to be able to look yourself in the mirror and say, I did the best I can. I did the best I could today.
Yeah. And he's got Danny's got the big guy in the middle. His development. I'm surprised he didn't jump this year, but I guess he needed another year of development. I probably put your name Clinic.
Yeah, and look, Jim completely loves college. Completely loves being in college. He loves. He's a Bristol, Connecticut kid. He lives half an hour away from the campus. Big Bristol group comes to every game. His high school coach, I sit a row behind him, and Donovan meets his high school coach still, like once a week. He'll go back to Bristol and just shoot with him for an hour and talk and go have dinner. He likes being close to home. His family is at every game, and for him, he'll have to take. I guess he has to take the money next year, after 2 years. But they tried this year, and he wouldn't go. He wanted to stay in college.
Just to switch gears a little bit. I mean, I got another book. I think if you go in every library across the country, this book is next to Friday Night Lights. So I didn't hear what you said, Coach, but I mean that book is probably in every library across the country, Friday Night Lights. So, this is 20 years of the team that Adrian Wojnarowski followed around. So just if you could just go back in time, that 20 years, about because that was like the kind of the first book, and I heard it on. I think you were getting interviewed by Mad Dog Russo. I went and bought that book that afternoon. It was such a great story. Just growing up in New Jersey, your story, and St. Anthony's. So just talk a little bit about looking back at that team 20 years ago.
Yeah,
And
well,
then,
it's amazing what happened in 20 years. Adrian Wojnarowski, Woj, was writing for the Bergen Record, and he, he followed us only a few games, and he called up and he wanted to sit down, and he had the idea of writing a book. Yeah, Woj, expressed interest in doing something, and he said he was just gonna basically be with us all the time, and it was going to start with when the season that 03 had finished in the spring before the kids were going to finish their junior year. He started watching them. He went to basketball camp. We went away to camp. He was with them when kids were going to take SATs. He was around. He was around all the time. And I think only one time did we say to him, "This is going to be off the record." We didn't know that we should say at times, this should be off the record. So he had full access, and I thought there's a couple of things in there that were just some little things that were inaccurate, because I would know about it because I lived it. But by and large, it was phenomenal. And those kids now, there's one of them. There was a large group of guys that were struggling with the standard we set at St. Anthony's, and they all wind up going. They all wound up going to college. There were Marcus Williams and Otis Campbell. They both graduated from St. Francis in Brooklyn, and I'm trying to think who else. Ahmad Mosby was in college for 3 years. He works for New Jersey Transit now.
Yeah, and Nivens, I think, went down to St. Joe's.
Shelton Gibbs. Oh, yeah.
Sure.
Yeah, just doing a senior sort of. Shelton Gibbs played at Nyack, and he graduated from Nyack, and his son now is a good young player. And then those kids who were a year after, Derek Mercer and Ahmad Nivens and Barney Anderson and Sean McCurdy, they're all doing very well. So a name or two I might not have mentioned have continued to make bad decisions, but if there were 10 of them, I think we had 8 that had at least 3 years of college finished, and one just out and about, and he was, it was going like that younger. But I think it was a difficult group to work with, because there was a lot of dysfunction around the kids. And school and doing well in school was like the least of their problems. And that was evidenced by so many of them wound up going on to junior colleges because the transcripts were just not what they needed to be. Yet the kids the year before them, one kid had gone to Syracuse, Terrence Roberts gone to Syracuse, Obi Wadike went to Central Connecticut. And then the year after these kids graduated, there were, Chris Gaston went to Fordham, and there were just, kids went to some really good schools around them. They just, they were doing in their world the best they could, and I think they did. And we're proud of the fact they're all now, functioning in the world as basketball players. The craziest part of the group was they could floor and play so well together, yet be off the court and be almost dysfunctional. Still be friendly, but have problems all the time. But on the floor, their ability to play defense, as passing for a bunch of guys that were a bit wild, they were so unselfish when they played. We would have to get guys like Marcus Williams, for example. Marcus, you had to yell at Marcus to shoot the ball. He was constantly looking to make plays. He wanted to guard the other team's best player. He didn't care if he took any shots. He was just about winning. And
he was tough. He was a tough player. Tough player too.
Oh yeah, he's from the Curry's Woods. He's from the Curry's Woods project, and he
undersized, but he could play against bigger players. So
he was a legendary athlete in Greenville, baseball, football, basketball, and the big fear was if he got out of the neighborhood and went to St. Anthony's, that was going to give him a chance. If he stayed in the neighborhood was too rough. He was too friendly with guys. His best friend growing up got thrown out of St. Anthony's in freshman year for performing a street robbery. And when they had to, when he was identified as a really tall kid whose hair was in braids. So they called me up in probation to say, one of you guys, a tall kid with braided hair, committed a street robbery. So I said, oh, no, we have no kids with long hair, whether you're white, brown, black, everybody gets short hairs. You give up something to be a part of something. I said, you can call the principal now, find out what kids in school had long braided hair. And it turned out to be one of the kids who was his friend who wasn't playing because he wouldn't get a haircut. And then if you move fast forward at 5 years later, Jim, he winds up committing 4 armed robberies in the city and gets about, I think the minimum, like 8-year sentence. He did. I think he may be back out now, but I don't know that he can resurrect his life.
Yeah, well, it's sad to hear. So,
Yeah.
just another topic. It's going to be 35 years since the 1989 championship team that you had. That's Bobby's years. That Bobby and Danny played together. Won 4 state championships in a row, and that was a school that kind of seemed like it sold that St. Anthony story to the world. People knew about it. New Jersey knew about Jersey City, but it just seemed like that team really put you guys on a national level, and it just not having a gym and how great the team was. You just talk a little bit about the 35 years looking back at that 89 team.
Well, I think from the starting coach in the 70s, we were progressively we were becoming better. We were getting better players were coming to school. So by the time from 70, I started into the 80s, early 80s, Mandy Johnson, and then David Rivers in 84, and Kenny Wilson in 85, we were getting better players. And all of a sudden now there was these national polls. And the national polls now by about 87, 88, we started to appear in those polls. And we were getting some invitations to play in some Christmas tournaments. And when we would go someplace to play various best teams from wherever we went, we won every tournament. When we go, and Bobby and Jerry played, and then Terry joined them later in high school because he worked his way up from freshman JV. From freshman year till they graduated, we won every national tournament we played in. And so went from...
I remember watching. I guess you played Miami Senior down, and it was on ESPN, or it was, it was televised. So, it's high school sports was starting. That was kind of like the evolution of high school sports getting programs on the map. So,
yeah, we had some great games and tournaments. Miami Senior was by far our best national rivalry. We played Shaky Rodriguez was the coach at Miami Senior. He was a good friend of mine. He would come up to play in the tournament. We would run. We ran for a few years before Christmas, and then we saw each other in tournaments. We actually coached together in '89 after we had a great year, and he finished second in the country. His only loss was to us. We coached together in the Dapper game. And we played in the Dapper Dan game. I don't know who's ever heard this story, but we played. I had Bobby and Billy McCaffrey, and I had Doug Edwards, who played at Florida, played at Miami Senior, went to Florida State, and I had Jerry Walker, and I had Conrad McRae, great player who went to Syracuse.
From the Bronx, from the Bronx, sure.
Yeah, and he died very early, had a heart attack, so sad. And we played Jimmy Jackson, and Shaquille O'Neal, and Harold Miner, who was the baby Jordan at the time. He was a phenomenal athlete.
Where did he go? Texas? Texas he went to? Harold Miner?
He went to USC or UCLA, one of those schools.
UCLA.
He was phenomenal. And he was first round pick. So they were loaded. And we scrimmaged them before the game on TV, and they beat us up. And then Jerry Walker had like a players only meeting, and he had Conrad McRae so ready to play that when we played the game on television now, we outscored this team with Shaq and Jimmy Jackson. I think 5 guys were really good NBA players. We were up 32-6 at one time in this game on television. Wow. And Sonny Vaccaro, who was running the game, came over during the game, and he tapped me on his shoulder and he said, "What are you doing to us? People are going to turn this game off." And I looked over him. I said, "Sonny, look at who's on this other team. If we call the dogs off, we're going to wind up losing this game. We wound up winning by about 10. And it was a great accomplishment because they had phenomenal players on the other team, but we had some real good chemistry. McCaffrey and Bobby, Jerry Walker, Conrad McRae, they were friends. And Doug Edwards was an unsung McDonald's All-American who just didn't have the pro career he could have had, but he was a great college player also.
Yeah, that Florida State team, they were good. I guess that was with Bob Sura. I think they had a good run. Then at Florida State, they had a good run, and that was like the first time that it was always a football school. That was the first time, like basketball wise, they started breaking through. So, but last questions. I'm putting something together about Alabama, coming from Elizabeth, St. Mary's, Beaulieu man. Bobby Hurley Bobby Knight just passed away. Just you talk a little bit about. I know you got the 2017. You won the FDU, the Alabama Award up in FDU. Just talk a little bit about Alabama and Beaulieu man.
Well, he's man defense, and his influences started in Union County because of St. Mary's Elizabeth, and then it traveled everywhere. Bob Knight's basis for his defense was coaches Beaulieu man. Everybody started with his philosophy, and then you tried to steer it a little bit, and he was successful everywhere he coached. He was phenomenal. He was such a good man. He was such a character, and he was such an old school authoritarian that you did things his way all the time, every day. And I knew him, loved him. I had a kid when I first started coaching, Howie Wilson, went to FDU to play for him right away after I sent him. He graduated in 74, and he went to Temple for a year, came back from Temple, and then he started at the Point for 3 years for Alabama. And he was an excellent defensive guard. He would, run the offense. And if he did something in a game, like dribble across half court and stop to see what coach wanted to have called, he would stop and put the ball between his legs, or stop, put the ball behind his back. And his replacement now would go to the table and he'd take him out because he was showboating when he would just stop. And because he grew up in the playground, dribbling between the legs and behind the back, like everybody in the playground did that in the cities, and he would yank him for that. And you know who he would put in the game? Seth Greenberg from television.
Sure.
He was his backup. He was the second point guard, and Howie was the starter. Brilliant defensive strategist. He tempoed the game. If there was no shot clock, there was no way that you were going to be able to get control of the game. And he could knock off his team, could play anybody, and they would have a chance to win because he was just, he was the godfather of man-to-man defense.
Yeah, and his teams would play anybody anywhere. I know his record doesn't show it, but he played, didn't matter where you were. He played you on your field, on your court.
And he went to St. John's and he assisted Lou Conaseca with the defense there. He was at Army. Taught Bob Knight, the Beaulieu man. Bob Knight was not a defensive guy. He had played at Ohio State. They were a fast-paced team. He learned the half-court defense and deliberate offense, a good part of that from Al's influence. Just phenomenal. The top of the chart for, Dean Smith is another one, influenced the game with the different things that he put in. Al started off the defensive end. He changed basketball, what he did defensively.
Yeah. Thanks, Coach. One last question. I'll let you go. White Eagle Hall, it's still there. You pass by there, and can you imagine, the bingo parlor, and now they're having venues there. They're having shows. They're having can you just back when you guys played the practice there, what it is now, White Eagle Hall.
Well,
you got to get a kick out of White Eagle.
You have the cycle of life. Danny had his 50th birthday. That his wife had a surprise birthday party there in what is now like a real upscale place to go. And White Eagle Hall, my God, it was a dump. It was, the basket on the stage would have fallen off the stage, except there's radiators were tied to the back of it. So if a kid dunked the ball, the weight on the back from the radiators would snap the basket back up. So
Oh,
they have the
geez.
breakaway rims. We had a breakaway basket where the basket would snap back up in place because of the weight of the radiators. They would overhangs around the court. You couldn't shoot from the corners at one end. It's like the old, the old CYO gyms. And we had to set up bingo tables on a Saturday and then take them down on Sunday. And like everybody recruited kids over the years, coaches that didn't go over and grab chairs and help with the tables just weren't looked at the same as the guys who dug in. And like somebody like PJ
Yeah.
Colissimo, I couldn't tell you how many years he was in there doing the tables. PJ, if I wasn't available, he could have set the tables up. He was there so many times.
And maybe done bingo, whatever. Who knows?
It was always a Saturday night bingo, and then we would take it down on Sunday. And every once in a while, they'd have a Sunday. They might have a Sunday event there. Not too many, because God knows who would want to rent this place for an event. But in the old days downtown, both Holy Rosary Parish and St. Anthony Parish, that's where they had all the weddings and all the events were in that building. And then over time, it just, it was falling apart. The man who bought it, he gutted the place and put a ton of money in it. And now it's like a music, music venue.
They have concerts there, and it's unreal. But listen, Coach, this is episode number 1. This is a new venture of mine. I appreciate the time. I appreciate you calling me back, and thanks for Mrs. Hurley for being the technical advisor here. I really appreciate it. Good luck this season. I'll be watching, and listen, you look great. Keep doing what you're doing. Thank you very much for the time. Like I said, I appreciate it. Take care, sir, and have a great day. All right. Good luck, Coach, and thank you for the time and opportunity. It's been an honor and privilege to speak to you again. I know our paths crossed over the years. I appreciate the time here. Also, good luck to UConn and Arizona State. I know you're going to be watching intently, and I appreciate. Look forward to more episodes coming up on the Chop Sports Network with Midlife Crisis host Jim Whelan. Thank you very much, and that's show number 1 in the books.